Hey there, all you marvelous musical mavens. Welcome back to Broadway by Ghostlight. I'm Mark Bonanni, and this is episode 59 of Broadway Jeopardy. If you like semi-obscure facts about semi-obscure shows featured on a semi-obscure YouTube channel, then hit that subscribe button so you never miss a video. I've got 26 clues ready to test your Broadway brains, so let's get right into this week's game. This is Broadway Jeopardy! Looking at the categories for this week, we start off as always with last week's Final Jeopardy category, which is Kristin Chenoweth. Today is Miss Chenoweth's birthday, so we're celebrating with a category all about her musical theater appearances. That's followed by obscure Tony-winning shows, looking at some shows that won at least one award at the Tonys and yet remains out of the public consciousness for the most part. Then we have Broadway debuts, looking at the first Broadway shows of some theatrical luminaries. And on the flip side, we have Broadway swan songs, dealing with the final musical of some of theater's biggest names. And last but not least, we have Font of Knowledge. This is a returning visual category where I'll show you a single letter from the logo of a musical and you tell me the show it's from. And we end with the Final Jeopardy category, so make sure and keep track of your scores if you want to play along, so you can wager some or all of your invisible earnings on that final clue. Things start off easy with the $200 round, or the overture round as we call it, but beware, the clues get progressively more difficult. Let's kick things off with birthday girl Kristin Chenoweth. Your first $200 clue there is... In Wicked, Glinda makes her first entrance in the show in a mechanical-looking one of these. What is a bubble? To make her first entrance in the show, the actress playing Glinda must get into the mechanical bubble a couple minutes before the start of the musical and waits up there in the rafters for her entrance. As the show has been running for well over 20 years on Broadway, as you can imagine, from time to time there have been some instances of the bubble not working properly. Here is a clip of one performance as curtain call where Glinda was forced to stay in the bubble for the entire bows. Moving on to the obscure Tony-winning shows category, your next $200 clue is... Russell Knipe won the Best Featured Actor Tony for this musical, starring Elaine Stritch and Don Amici, which has nothing to do with the story of the Three Bears. What is Goldilocks? Goldilocks is a very funny musical set in the wild world of silent films. It's an interesting show with some great songs. If only there were a detailed analysis of the history and plot of the show. It's me. I have one. Go watch it. Over in the Broadway debuts category, the $200 clue there is... Michael Cerveris played the titular pinball wizard in this rock musical based on the concept album by the band The Who. What is Tommy? The English rock band The Who first premiered Tommy in 1969 as their fourth studio album, and then toured the rock opera around the world, including the legendary Woodstock Music Festival. It was adapted a few times after that, including as a ballet in 1970 in Canada, and an opera in 1971 in Seattle, before being turned into a film in 1975. In 1992, director Des McAnuff wrote a new book for the rock opera, and it was produced on Broadway to great acclaim in 1993 at the St. James Theatre, starring future two-time Tony winner Michael Cerveris, who was making his Broadway debut as Tommy. Our first Broadway swan song for $200 is... Zero Mostel's final Broadway bow was reprising this role, which he originated in a revival of Fiddler on the Roof. Who is Tevye? The definition of larger than life, Zero Mostel's Tevye was loved by everyone except for Jerome Robbins, Fiddler's director and choreographer, and Mostel's co-stars. As the run of Fiddler went on, Zero would inevitably ad-lib and clown around in the show, something that would reportedly happen in almost every show Mostel appeared in. Though the audiences ate it up, it would drive his fellow actors crazy as they were not prepared for the constant additions and tomfoolery. This urge to augment his roles with silliness was reportedly one of the main reasons why Norman Jewison, the director of the lauded 1971 film adaptation of Fiddler on the Roof, chose not to cast Mostel in the role he had created.
Sounds crazy, no?
And finishing up the overture round in the Font of Knowledge category, your last $200 visual clue is: what is Into the Woods? The original artwork for Into the Woods was by artist and scenic designer Heidi Landsman. Landsman was the first woman to ever win the Tony for Best Scenic Design, which she won for the original production of Big River in 1985. I hope you all dominated that first round. Let's move on to the only slightly harder $400 round now. Circling back to Kristen Chenoweth, your first $400 clue is: in the 1999 revival of You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown, Miss Chenoweth brought the house down with the song My New This. What is Philosophy? My New Philosophy was not in You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown when it first premiered in 1967. Instead, the song was added specifically for the 1999 revival and was written by Andrew Lippa, who also wrote the song Beethoven Day for the revival. Miss Chenoweth would win the 1999 Tony Award for Best Featured Actress in a Musical for her turn as Charlie Brown's sister, Sally.
And that's my new philosophy.
That's your new philosophy.
Why are you telling me my new philosophy?
The $400 clue in the obscure Tony-winning shows is: this star of The Music Man on Broadway and film won his second Best Actor Tony Award for the musical I Do, I Do opposite Mary Martin. Who is Robert Preston? Based on the play The Four Poster, the sweet two-person musical with a score by Tom Jones and Harvey Schmidt follows a married couple from their wedding night until many years later when they sell their house to a new young couple. I Do, I Do opened on Broadway in 1966 and ran for about a year and a half. Next up in the Broadway debuts category, your $400 clue there is: Rosie O'Donnell made her Broadway debut in the revival of Grease, where she sang There Are Worse Things I Could Do as this character. Who is Betty Rizzo? Though if you just said Rizzo, that's of course acceptable. Besides Grease, Rosie O'Donnell also did stints in the musical Seussical as the Cat in the Hat, and a revival of Fiddler on the Roof as Golda opposite Harvey Firestein's Tevye. But of course, Miss O'Donnell also provided the nation with dozens of incredible performances from various Broadway shows via her talk show, The Rosie O'Donnell Show. Let's look at a librettist in the Broadway Swan Song category with the $400 clue. The final Broadway outing for writer Terrence McNally was the book of this musical, based on the animated film about a possible missing Russian princess. What is Anastasia? The score for Anastasia, both the original animated film and the new additions for the stage version, were by the team of Lynn Ahrens and Stephen Flaherty. Ahrens and Flaherty had worked with the esteemed writer Terrence McNally on their musicals Ragtime and A Man of No Importance as well. And your final $400 visual clue in the Font of Knowledge category is: what is Pippin? The logo for the original 1972 production of Pippin was by famed theatrical artist Tony Walton, who is also the scenic designer for Pippin, winning him his first Tony Award. Tony Walton designed dozens of original Broadway productions in addition to Pippin, like Chicago and A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum, famed revivals like the 1987 Lincoln Center Anything Goes and the 1992 Guys and Dolls, and even beloved films like Mary Poppins, starring his then-wife, Julie Andrews. Heading right into the $600 round now, back with Miss Chenoweth and the $600 clue. Kristen Chenoweth sang I'll Never Fall in Love Again in the 2010 revival of this Burt Bacharach and Hal David musical. What is Promises, Promises? A reading for the first revival of Promises, Promises took place in 2008, but not with Kristen Chenoweth, but instead it was Anne Hathaway playing opposite Will and Grace star Sean Hayes. Two classic Burt Bacharach songs were added to the revival, both to be sung by Miss Chenoweth: A House Is Not a Home and I Say a Little Prayer for You.
My darling, believe me, for me there is no one but you. Please love me too.
Back at obscure Tony-winning shows, the $600 clue there is: the 1974 Tony-winning Best Musical Raisin is based on the play A Raisin in the Sun by this author. Who is Lorraine Hansberry is the right response. The original play, A Raisin in the Sun, produced in 1959, was the first play by an African-American woman to be produced on Broadway. Though Miss Hansberry sadly passed away in 1965 at only 39 years old, well before the musical adaptation was made, Hansberry's husband, Robert Nemiroff, was co-book writer for the show based on his wife's play. The $600 clue in the Broadway debuts category is: this star of films like Trolls, Pitch Perfect, and A Simple Favor made her Broadway debut in the stage adaptation of High Society. Who is Anna Kendrick? As the clue stated, Miss Kendrick's first and so far only appearance on Broadway was in the stage adaptation of the musical film High Society, when the actress was only 13 years old. She would receive a Tony nomination for Best Supporting Actress for her debut as well. While starring in High Society, Miss Kendrick also appeared in the Carnegie Hall concert My Favorite Broadway, The Leading Ladies, where she sang the song Life Upon the Wicked Stage from Showboat, backed up by the original Kit Kat Girls from the 1998 revival of Cabaret.
Life upon the wicked stage ain't ever but the girls of roses. Stage door Johnny's orange raging over you with gems and roses.
Looking at a short-lived show in the Broadway Swan Song category with the $600 clue. The short-lived Dance a Little Closer was the final new musical from this lyricist and book writer, whose other shows included My Fair Lady and Brigadoon. Who is Alan J. Lerner? The prolific Alan J. Lerner, who often worked with his partner Frederick Lowe in the early part of his career, would contribute to 14 different Broadway musicals during his career. The only thing that Lerner did as much as writing for musicals was getting married. Alan J. Lerner walked down the aisle 8 different times in his life. Your next visual clue in the Font of Knowledge category for $600 is: what is In the Heights? The In the Heights design was a product of Spotco, one of the biggest ad agencies on Broadway. There is a great book by Drew Hodges, the founder of Spotco, called On Broadway From Rent to Revolution, which talks all about the marketing of the shows they've been involved with. It's time to crank the difficulty level up a notch or two with the $800 round now. But before we do, if you're enjoying this week's game and maybe learning something, please, oh pretty please, do me the honor of hitting that little like button for me. It really helps with the almighty YouTube algorithm and getting these videos shown to more fine folks like yourselves, but also makes me feel like I've just made my Broadway debut. Oh, thank you. No, please, everybody sit. Thanks, everyone. I truly do appreciate it. Into the $800 round, it's time to go. Back again with birthday girl Kristen Chenoweth. Your first $800 clue is: in the revival of this 1978 musical, Kristen Chenoweth's character imagines herself both as Veronique and Babette. What is On the 20th Century? The 2015 revival of On the 20th Century starred Miss Chenoweth as Lily Garland, a part originated by Madeline Kahn. In the show, Lily Garland is a big-name actress pursued by her ex-husband to star in a show for him. The song Veronique is a flashback to her first big role, that of a French streetwalker, and the song Babette is about a new role offered to her by a rival producer of her ex.
Max, I really, really love this play. I can safely say I will slay Broadway. Make way for Babette, the darling of the Mayfair set.
The next $800 clue from the obscure Tony-winning shows category is: based on the story by James Joyce, this 2000 musical won Best Book for librettist Richard Nelson. What is The Dead? The musical drama dealt with a married couple grappling with the realization of the hold the dead can sometimes have over the living. The musical, with a score by Sean Davey, along with librettist Richard Nelson, definitely wanted you to know that this was based on a James Joyce story. The actual full title of the show is James Joyce's The Dead. It boasted a stellar cast including Blair Brown, Daisy Egan, Alice Ripley and Emily Skinner, Stephen Spinella, and Christopher Walken. The musical, which transferred from Off-Broadway's Playwrights Horizons, ran for 4 months at the Belasco Theater. Looking at an icon with the Broadway debuts category with the $800 clue. Broadway legend Mary Martin made her Broadway debut in Leave It to Me, where she sang My Heart Belongs to This Person. Who is Daddy? Mary Martin caused a sensation when she first sang the song in Leave It to Me in 1938. In the show, her character of Dolly is stranded in a Siberian train station surrounded by eager men. She performs the song while slowly stripping off her many furs, teasing the men that while she may flirt and have some fun, she wouldn't actually portray her daddy, which is her sugar daddy, by the way, not her actual father. Miss Martin recreated the number in two different films, the 1940 movie Love Thy Neighbor and the 1946 Cole Porter biopic Night and Day.
While tearing off a game of golf, I may make a play for the caddy, but when I do, I don't follow through, 'cause my heart belongs to Daddy.
Over in the Broadway Swan Song category, your next $800 clue is... The musical Mr. President, starring Nanette Fay-Bray and Robert Ryan, was the final musical for this storied songwriter of America the Beautiful and White Christmas, among hundreds of others. Who is Irving Berlin? One of the greatest music masters of all time, Irving Berlin was one of the few songwriters to bridge the gap between early musical comedies like The Music Box Revue and Face the Music, and the musicals of the Rodgers and Hammerstein age, with book shows like Annie Get Your Gun and Call Me Madam. Fellow composer Jerome Kern was once asked in an interview where Irving Berlin's place was in the annals of American music, and Kern famously replied that Irving Berlin has no place in American music. Irving Berlin is American music. And don't take the L in the font of knowledge category with the $800 clue. What is Leap of Faith? The Leap of Faith design was from the Broadway ad agency Serino Coyne, another big player in the Broadway ad and marketing world. We've reached that point, my friends. The big show, the main event. It's the $1,000 round. Give me that dramatic music. Good luck, players. Blowing out the last candle in the Kristen Chenoweth category with the $1,000 clue. Miss Chenoweth created the roles of the waitress and Nurse Nancy in this William Finn musical, which opened off-Broadway at Lincoln Center in 1998. What is A New Brain? A New Brain is about a songwriter who learns he has a critical condition called arteriovenous malformation, I hope I pronounced that correctly, an abnormality in the blood vessels, and he must have emergency brain surgery. The musical was written by William Finn after leaving the hospital after he himself was diagnosed with the very same condition. The $1,000 clue in the obscure Tony-winning shows category is... This musical, with a score by Julie Stein, Betty Comden, and Adolph Green, won the 1968 Tony for Best Musical. Its star, Leslie Uggams, won as well. What is Hallelujah Baby? Hallelujah Baby was about a young African-American woman named Georgina who, though she always remains 25 years old, goes through life trying to become a star while facing racism and prejudice starting from the early 1900s through the Depression, World War II, and onto modern day at the beginning of the Civil Rights Movement. Though the show won 5 Tonys, including Best Musical, it was the Broadway debut of its Tony-winning star Leslie Uggams that it's most remembered for today. It also has the distinction of being the only Best Musical recipient to win after the show had already closed.
Now's the time, now's the time, no more singing for myself, no more going it myself and all alone, gotta sing for everyone's supper, not just my own.
Debuting the $1,000 clue in the Broadway debuts category, we have... This musical, which starred Robert Weedy and Molly Picon, was the Broadway debut score from Jerry Herman. What is Milk and Honey? The musical follows Ruth, an American visiting Israel with a group of fellow widows, all hoping to find husbands. Ruth does indeed find a man named Phil, also an American, who's visiting his daughter who lives in the country, and the pair fall in love. The problem is that Phil is already someone else's husband. Milk and Honey ran for over a year at the Martin Beck Theater, now called the Al Hirschfeld. The $1,000 Swan Song clue in the Broadway Swan Song category is... This is the last new musical from Cole Porter to reach Broadway, which was based on the film Ninotchka. What is Silk Stockings? As the clue stated, Silk Stockings was based on the film Ninotchka and tells the story of Ninotchka, a no-nonsense Soviet commissar sent to Paris to knock some sense into 3 Russian envoys who have given in to the temptations of the French capital. While in Paris, Ninotchka meets Steve, a handsome theatrical impresario who introduces her to the pleasures of capitalist life. A film version of Silk Stockings was made in 1957 starring Fred Astaire and Sid Charisse. And the curtain call visual clue in the font of knowledge category for $1,000 is... What is a class act? A class act was a biomusical about Edward Kleban, a composer and lyricist who is best remembered today for writing the lyrics to a chorus line, winning him the Tony and Pulitzer Prize. And with that, we've reached the final Jeopardy round, everyone. Time to tally up those scores and decide how much you want to wager in the category At This Performance. Here we're looking at some big names in musical theater who at one point served as understudies. Okay, has everyone made their wagers? Deborah? Ryan? Liz? Okay, here is your final clue. Shirley MacLaine got her big break while understudying this woman, the original Gladys in The Pajama Game. Who is Carol Haney? Carol Haney was a magnificent performer who began her professional career as Gene Kelly's choreography assistant on some of his best films, like On the Town, An American in Paris, and Singin' in the Rain. She also appeared as a dancer in a few films, including Kiss Me Kate, where she danced with Bob Fosse. Later on, Fosse recommended Carol Haney for The Pajama Game and gave her 2 of the show's best numbers, Hernando's Hideaway and Steam Heat. While Haney was out with a broken ankle during the run of Pajama Game, a big film producer saw the show and took her understudy, Shirley MacLaine, to Hollywood, and the rest is history. And that's this week's game! How did you all fare this week? Were you shouting hallelujah baby? Or was your score James Joyce's Dead on Arrival? Be sure to let me know in the comments. I love hearing from you guys and seeing your scores. Be sure to check out my latest Broadway 101 video all about the wonderful Frank Lesser, who not only wrote some of the greatest musical comedies of all time, but also some of the classic songs that are part of our collective consciousness. A huge shout out to each and every member of my Patreon. You guys are the backbone of this channel, and I could not keep making these videos without you. If you want to be as amazing as these folks here, be sure to head on over to my Patreon using the link in the video description, where there's also a link to my merch shop if you want to get some fun theatery related designs there. If you want to connect outside of YouTube, you can find me on Blue Sky or Instagram, where I just had a reel about a fun story involving the musical Take Me Along, and United Airlines has been doing some numbers, which is new and fun for me, so I'll definitely be posting more one-off stories like that over on Instagram, so head on over there and give me a follow. I'll be back next week with episode 60. That can't be right. That's insane. But until then, I'm Mark Benani. This is Broadway by Ghostlight. Thanks for playing.